We've got some breaking news out of the college football playoff, where Miami comes away with a 10-3 win over Texas A&M in College Station at Kyle Field. For the Canes, it's their first win in a BCS New Year's Six CFP game since 2003 in the Orange Bowl against Florida State. Carson Beck, 103 in the air with a touchdown. This was a low-scoring game, well under the projected total, but Miami wins and will now face OSU in the Cotton Bowl next week. Hey there, folks. Welcome to CBS Sports HQ alongside Damien Harris, Mackenzie Brooks, and Danny Kanell. I'm Tommy Tran, where it is final from College Station and Kyle Field, where Miami goes on the road and wins 10-3. Mr. ACC, Danny Kanell, what are we thinking there?
I was just wondering how Mackenzie, Mrs. SEC,
have you checked your mentions yet?
By the way,
I'm gonna have to delete Twitter for 48 hours at least.
I mean, I think it's interesting because I thought this game gave us what we thought we were going to get last night. Oklahoma, Alabama, the point total was 40.5. I thought it would be 16-13. That one was a higher scoring game, but all of a sudden these two defenses were on full display. So you put on a couple of great defenses, you put a couple quarterbacks that neither team really trusts much of the game, combine that some windy conditions and a kicking disaster, and I think it was one of the more entertaining 10-3 games that I've ever watched, because you're on the edge of the seat realizing one play was going to be the difference in the outcome. And sure enough, Malachi Toney getting redemption for an early turnover where he fumbled the ball. It was phenomenal. And I do give Miami a ton of credit, because as I was watching that unfold and they're going in for that game-winning score, I was thinking, do not get conservative. Do not trust a kicker who had been 1-4 on the day. And I know it wasn't a pass play, but it was a very creative play by Shannon Dawson to get Malachi Toney on the edge. I thought that was one of the best play calls of the game, and the difference.
Yeah, and another difference, a huge difference, Mark Fletcher Jr. And, you know, I picked Texas A&M to win this game. I should have known, with two quarterbacks that their teams don't trust them, you have to lean on the running game. And I said Mark Fletcher gave Miami the running edge in this game, and he did nothing short of deliver. Tommy Tran, 17 carries, 172 yards, over 10 a carry. He was the heartbeat of this offense. He kept them in this game. When the score was 3-3, when it was 0-3, when it was like, who's going to give, right? It might not have resulted in points, but he always gave this team life. He always gave them a spark. He got them out of a lot of dirty situations, and a lot of times he kept them ahead of the down and distance. So hats off to Mark Fletcher, but also Mario Cristobal as well. I've criticized him a lot, but to Danny's point, for him to sit up there and still have the foot on the gas, be aggressive, and put Texas A&M away. Not, okay, we're going to hold the ball and sit here and just kick a field goal. No, we are going to win this game. We're going to go score, win this game. He got his defense ready. The offense did their job. They did what they were supposed to do. I know that this wasn't a 21-3 win. This gave me a lot of confidence in Miami moving forward with the playmakers that they have. If Carson Beck has a better day, that defense, Bain and Mesidor wreaking havoc today. This is a team that can take it all the way.
So then, looking ahead, Kens, what are we thinking here with Miami's the next matchup in the next round? What's the early data telling us here?
Early data is saying Ohio State 31, Miami 21. So here's the thing, and I've spoken for the model all year, who clearly has not been in on Miami. So I think that's probably the floor of Miami's play, right? That's what the model's going to see. Again, those past losses of this season are still going to be baked in here, but watching the way they've played, those are things you can't account for, right? The adversity they overcame here, and being in such a low, ugly scoring game, something we don't usually see for Miami. I think that's the floor of what this could be. I think Miami is probably more of a threat than than Texas A&M would have been. I think the Texas A&M Ohio State score actually would have been a wider margin here. So this might be more of a threat, I think, to Ohio State.
We'll continue a look ahead to the game with Ohio State in just a second, but like, what did you guys think about Miami in terms of, I always think of like Iron Man and the Avengers saying we have a Hulk. I feel like Malachi Toney is Miami's Hulk. And what was he used today there, Danny? Or Danny, which one do you guys?
Both of them. I mean, I think Mark Fletcher Jr. was the Hulk today.
Okay.
But I think it's a great like 1-2 combo, because you've got Fletcher, sort of a power back that can just give you those body blows, and then the knockout can be Malachi Toney because of the weapon he is, the speed he shows. He had a big return today. He's just a phenomenal young player who is just a freshman and has a lot of great football ahead of him. But that's the best part about this Miami team that gives you a little bit of confidence, is they do have multiple ways to beat you with the ground game. And I do think, I don't know if anybody realized how much wind impacted both of these quarterbacks. There were a couple open receivers down the field, and they were missed. And it's Like, if you were a quarterback, there's rain, there's wind, there's cold, and those wind gusts were up, where it can impact so much in the pass game. That's, I think, what you would be excited about if you're Miami, because Carson Beck did not play great, but he didn't make the big mistake, and I think he will play better when the conditions are a little bit calmer there in the next round.
Feel like that, Dave?
Yeah, I do. I think that today was a result of the win. Because, I mean, when you look at the numbers, 14 of 20, that's not bad. It was 103 yards, but guess what? Again, Mark Fletcher had almost 200 on the ground, and then you mix Malachi Toney in there. I do think he will play better under better conditions. And then if you're Ohio State, or if you're any team that would have to face Miami, then you have to worry about Fletcher. Then you have to worry about Toney. Then you have to worry about Maine and Besador not wreaking havoc on your offense. Like, this is a team that showed today they can win in different ways. They can rely on not scoring a ton of points or not having a huge day from Carson Beck. They can win an ugly, low-scoring, defensive juggernaut type game, and they've got the playmakers that can make that one critical play at the most important part of the game that flipped the game on its head.
I feel bad. I was the most ultimate jinx all morning. I was like, you know, it's Carson Beck versus Marcel Reed interceptions. They're both going to have them, but Carson Becks are always way more timely, way more costly than Marcel Reed's, and sure enough, Marcel Reed to seal the deal, looking right at me with a middle finger.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say,
slap.
Gotcha.
One more, slap.
I hate to see players that have to end a season like that. Marcel Reed had a tremendous season, but coming down the stretch, I do think some of his deficiencies as a passer really started to show up, and he can improve on those. You still saw him with an incredible performance to put him in that position to win. But we saw Carson Beck make a mistake against SMU where you still had another down. Like, you still had more time. And you just, as a young quarterback, you try to force the issue and feel like you have to win the play and you have to make the touchdown throw. And you forget that you can, throw it away. It's okay. And come back one more. So that one, I think, is one Marcel Reed's going to want to, wish he could have back. And unfortunately for him, it was a tremendous play from Miami's defense, which I think is a story of this game as well.
Lowest scoring CFP game of all time, but was no shortage of entertainment that we saw out in Kyle Field today as Miami comes away with the victory over Texas A&M 10-3. Here's a look at the updated bracket. Alabama, of course, advancing after their win in Norman, Oklahoma yesterday to face Indiana at the Rose Bowl. Miami and Ohio State at the Cotton Bowl the end of the year. Much more to come here on HQ to see the other two slots that will be filled by the end of tonight. We continue to follow breaking news here on HQ, where Miami beats Texas A&M at their place 10-3 to advance in the college football playoff. Malachi Toney continues to be a weapon for Mario Cristobal and his team, and we talked a lot about Mark Fletcher. He's 172 on the ground, the most by a Miami player in a game versus a top 10 team since Frank Gore in 2004. Here's a look at the college football playoff bracket as it stands. Alabama advancing last night with their win over Oklahoma in Norman. Down at the bottom, Miami facing Ohio State at the Cotton Bowl in Arlington, Texas on New Year's Eve. Back here with the crew, Dame, Kens, and DK, I'm Tommy. So, Kens, we were talking about what the Sportsline projection model had in terms of what you guys had in the look ahead, which was about 8.5, which is fairly close of what the model says. Yeah, I'm looking now. Now we're going to rerun with essentially the upgrade of Miami's defense, right? Now that we've seen what you've been able to do against a school like the caliber of Texas A&M. But I'm looking at all the projections right now. Looks like a 50-yard edge in the air for Ohio State, which is a big reason as to why we have them winning by around 10 points. Exactly identical rushing yards, 141 each, but you are seeing more turnovers projected for Miami. Obviously, Carson Beck's turnovers just kind of following him as we use past data, 1.5 projected compared to Ohio State's closer to just 1 here. So it looks like it's going to be everything through the air, essentially, that's going to be the difference for Ohio State to win this game. What are you guys thinking about the look ahead and the projected 10-point difference here between these two?
I'm not surprised. Ohio State still has the most talented roster in the country, but I will say the defense today, I think, should be a major wake-up call for Ryan Day and that Ohio State offense, because against Indiana, they gave up 5 sacks. Like, they need to figure out on the offensive line how to protect Julian Sayin better. And they'd given up 6 sacks all year up to that point. And now we just watched a game in which Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor showcase why a lot of people thought Ruben Bain should have been in the Heisman hunt, or through 5 games this season. Those are a couple impact players who can make it a really long night for Julian Sand. And then on the flip side, the Ohio State defense now knows exactly what they need to do. And for me, it's priority 1 is shutting down Mark Fletcher, putting more of the onus on Carson Beck to come up big in that situation. So I think a lot of people are going to just say Ohio State's going to roll. But I think Miami can make this a competitive game.
Indiana ran for 120 yards on this Ohio State defense, and I would argue that up front in the trenches, Miami's better. At the running back position, Miami is better, and we saw that on full display today against one of the better defenses in the SEC, especially in terms of that front. Mark Fletcher he made himself the X factor for this team. We've talked a lot about how it's Malachi Tony. He's no longer the X factor. He's now the superstar. He's the guy that you expect to go out there and make those superstar game-changing type plays. The X factor in terms of keeping you on schedule, keeping you in a rhythm, keeping you in a game with the all-feared Ohio State defense, and you match their physicality and you run directly at them. Mark Fletcher brings that type of intensity to this offense. He's going to make it challenging on this defense. And then imagine what that can open up for Carson Beck.
Which is interesting to piggyback off of that, because if you have a performance like Mark Fletcher's had today, what do you think some of those conversations are in terms of game planning for Ohio State, knowing you're coming off this terrific performance against the Aggies today?
Well, you go into it if you're Matt Patricia, the defensive coordinator, and you say, okay, this is a team that can run the football and win. We have to stop the run. No, any defensive coordinator I've ever been around, it's always been about stopping the run first. You have to stop the ground game because you don't want somebody just penetrating the teeth of your defense and getting consistent positive yards. Carson Beck is going to have to be an afterthought. I mean, he just threw for 103 yards. As Mackenzie tells us, the turnover bug, that narrative, it follows him everywhere he goes. So if you're Matt Patricia, you're telling Caleb Downs, Davidson Igbinosun, he's going to give us our opportunities. We need to take care of the running game and Mark Fletcher and not let him give them the confidence that they can just move the ball at will, then give the quarterback confidence. Then all of a sudden, Malachi Tony makes a play that just opens the game wide up.
Danny, you were hinting at Mario Cristobal's team, and you mentioned on both X/Twitter and here about the winner of the Texas A&M and Miami game was going to be a true threat moving forward. And Miami at one point early the first 3-4 weeks of the season was even power rated as the #1 team from our Brandon Marcello puts our power rankings together. How close were they looking like a top-tier team today?
I mean, clearly, offensively, you have to be more balanced. But I feel like I've seen it at times this season, and I think going into College Station, in that crowd, in that environment, and I mean, I know the stats weren't great and they didn't move the ball up and down the field, but they were able to run the football. I do trust Carson Beck maybe more than some, and we saw his record flashed up there, 35-4. It's one of the, is it 34-5 or 34, whatever it is. It's really impressive, right? How many games he's played and won in, and I feel like we've all of us, and deservedly so, have focused so much on his interception problems. But they really have come in bunches this year. I mean, he had the 4, which kind of throws off his TD interception ratio this season. Other than that, he's been pretty good with the football. So I think you sort of have to trust him in this environment, in this stage, as a veteran, somebody who's played a lot of football, going against a freshman, or not a freshman, a first-year starter, Julian Sand, who hasn't faced a lot of adversity yet. And now that pressure is on him. So I think if you're Miami, and I felt this way coming in, you got house money to play with. All of a sudden you have this new lease on life. So they're playing pretty loose and pretty free. Ohio State now, that's flipped. They're the heavy favorite. They're the defending national champion. So I actually still do think Miami is a team that could knock off Ohio State.
And it's a team that got to warm up. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we saw last year all the teams with byes came out with cold feet. So I think it's a great win. Now, granted, hopefully everyone comes out of that game healthy as they can be, but something to be said about the momentum here. I'm a little worried if I'm Ohio State with the momentum they have and the house money.
And not to mention, the last time they played, they did what? They lost.
Yeah.
They lost. And now, we know that these kids listen to the media more than ever right now, right? And we, as the media, have sat and we said this is one of the best teams that we have ever seen. They're more talented. They're better coached. Their defense is impenetrable, or impenetrable. Yeah, impenetrable. Yeah, I got it right. It came out a little weird. Their defense is impenetrable. Their young quarterback, he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. They've got Tarzan on one side, then they've got Carnell Tate, who's flash on the other side. And guess what? They still lost. So I just wonder, and I'm not projecting this. I'm not saying Ohio State is going to go into this game playing scared, but is there just a hint of doubt that can be exploited by if Miami starts fast, if they can run the football well, then all of a sudden Ohio State is like, wait a minute. we've been here before, and the last time, then it creates a little bit of panic. So I'll be interested to see how Ohio State comes out playing after a loss.
And one of the reasons I liked Miami coming into this game was because Texas A&M had just been tested their toughest game of the year and lost. Ohio State just faced the toughest team they faced all season and lost. So
Well,
I do
think
think
about
momentum.
that. I mean, Ohio State, they've played what? Texas and Ohio State were probably light years ahead the rest of the competition they've played so far this season. You beat Texas 14-7, and it kind of took a lot to do that, and then you lose to the other team with a pulse. So I think this team is so awesome, but it is worth mentioning the competition they have played and the results of those two games.
And Miami's been playing in a playoff mindset. I know the opponents weren't great, but they had to win impressively, and they had to keep doing it. And they did it for 4 games in a row, closing that gap with Notre Dame, finalizing it with their best performance against Pitt. Carried some of that momentum into this one where there is a confidence. I mean, we talked about this with Alabama, what makes them a little bit dangerous. You get some confidence. You want to peak at the right time, which is now in the playoffs. And I think still Miami, they're going to, and this is the best case situation for Mario Cristobal, because you didn't play great on offense and you won the game. Now now your team, you can coach them up, you can show them how much better they can get, and so you can use that to your advantage as a coach. Like, you don't have to worry about them coasting or overlooking Ohio State. They'll be very focused on this game.
Final thought on the spread, and Ken's, I'm going to give you.
I just saw it.
Yes.
Change again?
So,
Yeah,
so 8.5 the look ahead.
Yeah.
Now FanDuel's opened up 11.5 when we started this conversation, but it's already been bought down to 10.5.
I was going to say.
So it looks like
as long as it's under that 10.5, if it's a 10, I like Miami.
I'd wait to get back under that key number of 10 here. 10.5 does feel like a lot. Again, I was saying our projected score is a 10-point game, and I'm the first to say that probably will get smaller once we rerun Miami's stats and we wait through the rest of the college football playoff schedule to play out today. But I would probably not want to take that unless it's under that 10 number. And the total's 41.5, so maybe we're seeing more low-scoring games here. I wonder if what we've seen today is going to affect that. But I don't know. Then we saw that shootout with the Oklahoma and Alabama. It's like, how do you know?
you don't.
Vegas
That's why
knows.
it's fun. But they do.
Vegas knows. They know.
All right, DK, Dame, Ken's, great stuff. Good conversation on this one. Again, Miami getting away with the victory against Texas A&M and already planning now for Ohio State. There is a look at the CFP quarterfinal preview happening on New Year's Eve at the Cotton Bowl. It'll be the Buckeyes' 5th Cotton Bowl appearance and the 6th meeting all time between these two, first since 2011. We'll have more coverage coming up, more Miami post-game for you here on CBS Sports HQ. It's going to be a nice flight back to South Florida for the Canes and their fans today.